Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the really extraordinary mind of Paul Graham. Now, when you hear that name, maybe you think Silicon Valley entrepreneur or investor. And well, you'd be right, but he's so much more. I mean, this is a programmer who studied philosophy, seriously pursued painting, and then became a serial tech founder and, one of the most influential angel investors out there. His journey and the insights he shared, they offer a really unique way of looking at how the modern world actually works.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating is how his book, Hackers and Painters, it just perfectly captures that mix. The title itself, it has this dual meaning. On one hand, sure, it's about Paul Graham's own path, the hacker and the painter, two seemingly different worlds, right? But maybe even more importantly, it shines a light on this crucial group, often misunderstood, these computer enablers, the programmers who are, well, basically blazing the trail in the internet age. And now with AI, understanding their mindset, what makes them tick, their unusual methods, it feels more critical than ever, especially now.
Absolutely. So our mission today for this deep dive is to unpack that. The hacker's journey, how they grow, their distinct worldview, and their practical work methods, too. We really want to give you a kind of shortcut to understanding this hugely influential group, not just as, abstract measures, but maybe as a framework for your own thinking, problem solving, even how you approach creating value. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, let's start with the word itself, hacker. What does Paul Graham actually mean by that? Because it's probably not the first image that pops into your head. He's actually reaching back to its original meaning, someone who solves problems cleverly, ingeniously. Think like hacking down a tree with a surprising efficient technique, not, illegal computer stuff.
Right, not the Hollywood version.
Exactly. So in this context, a hacker is someone tackling problems with real skill, intelligence, and this deep exploratory spirit. Always looking for elegant solutions. It's kind of an intellectual artistry.
That's a great way to put it. And, a key thing that really separates a hacker, in Graham's view, from just any programmer is their motivation. They do things purely for fun, for the enjoyment of it. The intellectual kick they get from solving a puzzle or building something cool, it's not because they have to, not external pressure. This doing it for fun is just central to who they are and how they work.
Yeah.
It fuels their drive in ways that, frankly, deadlines rarely can.
That intrinsic motivation idea is really powerful, isn't it? Especially today. But it leads to this surprising connection he makes between hackers and painters. He says they both tend to prefer interacting with objects or systems more than people. And this preference, he argues, often sets the stage for what he calls a tragic childhood. That's a strong word, White.
Yeah, it's a strong word, yeah. Provocative.
Mm.
Graham points to that age range, like 12 to 18, those really formative years. During that time, especially in school, social status, that's often tied to things like looks or charisma, being good at sports, the drill.
Oh, yeah.
So these highly intelligent kids who are maybe more focused on how things work, on ideas, on systems, they're not necessarily navigating those complex social hierarchies well. They often feel isolated, awkward. And he even says they can become sort of imaginary enemies for others trying to build social cliques just because they don't quite fit in. They're smart, sure, but maybe not popular.
Yeah.
And that can be genuinely difficult during adolescence.
That paints a really clear picture. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. You mentioned this. Graham argues that this early isolation, this intense focus on things, it actually becomes a huge advantage later in adulthood. How does something that sounds pretty negative turn into a superpower?
Right. It's quite a flip. Basically, in adulthood, especially in fields that value results, tangible creation, making stuff more than just social skills or popularity, these individuals suddenly thrive. In a way, they were sort of playing the adult game all along without even realizing it, preparing for a world that would eventually value exactly what they were good at. While maybe others were focused on social climbing, hackers were honing their minds, learning to build, to solve problems. So when the world shifts to reward that kind of ingenuity, their earlier struggles, that becomes their competitive edge. They're less distracted by social games, more focused on actually creating things.
Okay, so that foundation, focusing on things, it shapes more than just work habits. It shapes their whole worldview, especially around something like wealth. Graham talks about their rebellious streak, this deep desire for freedom. He even says top hackers are often unbuyable. What's he mean by that? Unbuyable. How does that challenge how we usually think about wealth?
He means they don't really need to be bought, because often they don't actually lack money. Or, more accurately, they have the means to create what they need. And this really pushes you to think about what wealth is. You might think, okay, programmers type code. How does that make them unbuyable? Lead to billions. Well, Graham's core insight here is that money. It's just a medium, a tool for trade. Real wealth is the actual stuff people can use or own: food, clothes, houses, cars, software. And hackers, like painters, they directly create this real wealth, often from scratch. Every line of code, every brushstroke, that is wealth creation. They have the skill to make something valuable out of essentially nothing. And yeah, this ability does tend to widen the income gap between those who have these creation skills and those who don't. It's a big factor in why some people get very wealthy very quickly.
Right, and that leads to what he calls the leverage effect of technology. Can you give us an example, something that shows how this leverage really impacts wealth creation and that gap you mentioned?
Sure. Think about farming, like he does. For centuries, it was oxen. Slow, hard work. Then the tractor comes along. It doesn't just make things a bit faster. It makes one person maybe 6 times more efficient. All that saved labor, that extra output, that's new wealth. And it naturally flows to the people who invented and used the tractor. Technology, especially software, has this incredible, almost exponential leverage. A single piece of code can serve millions, even billions. So the wealth created by that innovation just accumulates incredibly fast for the creators. That's a big reason why the monetary wealth gap, it's likely to keep widening.
That's a pretty stark picture. But connecting this to the bigger picture, what about everyone else? People who aren't technical? Are they just left behind? Is there any counter trend?
Well, Graham points out something really interesting, often overlooked. He says, while the monetary wealth gap might be widening, the quality of life gap between, say, the rich and the not-so-rich is actually shrinking because of technology.
Also.
Think about it. A very wealthy person might have a Rolls-Royce and a driver, but you can call a taxi or a rideshare. You get a private driver, too, just for that trip, for way less money. They might have private chefs. You can order from hundreds of restaurants delivered to your door. Takeout quality is amazing now. A designer handbag might cost a fortune, but a really well-made one from an online store for, $20 can look pretty similar to most people. So, thanks to the software hackers build, access to a certain quality of life is becoming much more similar across the board. And this convergence, Graham suggests, it allows more people to think about creating wealth from a less survival-driven place, more relaxed, freeing up headspace to make things people genuinely need or want, beyond just the basics.
That's a really powerful counterpoint. Okay, so if hackers are good at creating things people need, how do they figure out what people need, especially those big breakthrough ideas? Graham had this little trick, right? Finding unspeakable things or thought taboos.
Exactly. He uses these great historical examples, like back in the 16th century, saying the earth went around the sun. Huge taboo. Giordano Bruno dared to think it, and well.
Yeah, it didn't end well.
No. Or Darwin in the 19th century. Evolution was unthinkable for many, but he pursued it. More recently, putting a powerful computer and a phone in your pocket. Steve Jobs pushed that. Reusable rockets. Elon Musk. Graham's point is that real innovation often hangs out in the territory of ideas that currently seem absurd or that make people uncomfortable, make them bristle. If you can spot those areas, the things society sort of refuses to touch intellectually, that's often where the big unmet needs and breakthrough opportunities are hiding.
It's a great mental exercise, isn't it, just to push your own boundaries. But Graham adds a warning for you, the listener. While it's good to develop this intellectual flexibility, he advises maybe not always shouting these taboo thoughts from the rooftops.
Right. You might end up like Bruno, maybe metaphorically burned at the stake online these days, drowned out by public opinion. The real value is in developing that internal agility, that foresight. It's not necessarily about seeking conflict or just being provocative.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Let's talk about the hacker's craft, how they actually make things, specifically how they create beautiful things. This idea of beauty is central to what Graham calls the product manager's self-cultivation. He's basically saying that developing good taste and eye for beauty in design is crucial for anyone building stuff. And importantly for creators, beauty isn't just some vague idea. It has to show up in the product, in how it works, how it feels. And while, taste is subjective, Graham insists there are definitely levels of mastery. We can all get better at recognizing good design.
And what's really useful is how he tries to break it down. He lists 14 standards for good design, but we can maybe touch on 7 key ones that really apply broadly. Not just coding, but writing, anything creative. First one, simplicity. Good design is simple, elegant. Think of the best mathematical proofs, they're usually the shortest. EMC cast right. Simple, beautiful. Graham notes that beginners often overcomplicate things, maybe to hide that they're new. Verbose writing, overly fancy code, even elaborate hairstyles, he says, trying too hard. True mastery often lies in finding that simple, elegant solution.
That's a great point about simplicity hiding in plain sight, it connects to the second principle you mentioned, timelessness. Does he give examples of, say, tech designs that feel timeless? That idea of appealing across generations seems tough in tech.
Yeah, he acknowledges it's incredibly hard, especially in tech, where things change so fast. Almost everything ages eventually. But the goal, the aspiration is key. He suggests testing it. Does it appeal to your grandparents? If it resonates with them, maybe it taps into something more fundamental, something human that could last longer. Maybe even 2,000 years, he muses. It's about focusing on the core, the essential function, and maybe classic aesthetics, rather than just chasing the latest trend. Third principle, inspiration and playfulness. Good design shouldn't just work, it should be inspiring. Often it has a bit of playfulness, maybe even humor. He mentions great literature like Dream of the Red Chamber, how it plants clues and invites the reader to participate, to imagine, to co-create the meaning. That's engaging. And humor, he argues, isn't frivolous. It actually signals strength, confidence. Like you're comfortable enough to not take everything deadly seriously. It frees you up.
That link between humor and strength in design, you don't hear that often. It makes me think about how much effort must go into making something seem effortless or playful. Which leads to the fourth one, hard work. Why is just plain hard work so crucial for good design, according to Graham?
He's very clear on this. He basically says, choose the harder path. It usually leads to better results. His example is portrait painting. It takes immense effort because we humans are experts at faces. Any tiny mistake, an eye slightly off, we notice it instantly. It shatters the illusion. So his warning is, if your design process feels easy, you're probably cutting corners. You're missing something important. You might actually be wasting time because the end result won't be truly good. Real quality takes serious effort and focus. Fifth, redesign and iteration. This is huge. Good design, Graham says, is almost always a redesign. Great stuff isn't born perfect. It's revised, refined, iterated on, again and again, trying to be perfect right from the start. That can paralyze you, stop you from even beginning. He stresses that drafts, even really bad ones, are vital starting points. A bad beginning, he says, is 1,000 times better than no beginning at all. It's all about embracing that cycle of improvement.
That's definitely a relief for anyone stuck staring at a blank page. And it connects to the sixth one, reproducibility or copying. Graham's take here is interesting. Great creators aren't afraid to use good ideas from others. He says, be shameless about copying excellent work.
Yeah, it's a very practical viewpoint. The best creators, the masters, they're not obsessed with being totally original just for the sake of it. Their main goal is to get the right answer, to make something truly great. So if someone else has already figured out a great solution or designed a beautiful element, they learn from it. They integrate it. Shamelessly, as he says. He contrasts this with beginners, who are often insecure and terrified of being called a plagiarist.
Like Steve Jobs saying, good artists copy, great artists steal.
Exactly that kind of spirit. It applies everywhere. Coding, painting, writing. The core human drive to create and the standards for what's genuinely good, they share these common threads.
And it all comes back to where great design starts. Often it's someone with really high taste seeing something they think is ugly, and not just visually ugly, but maybe functionally clunky, inefficient, just badly done. And they feel this almost irresistible urge to fix it, to make it better. That ability to spot the ugly is basically the ability to spot opportunities, right? Problems needing solutions. And then if you have the skill to actually realize that taste, to turn that vision into something real, something beautiful and functional, that's how great work happens. That's how real value gets created.
So yeah, let's tie this all together. We've seen how hackers, partly because of that object focus, maybe those difficult childhoods, they develop these unique strengths. Strengths that let them build world-changing things. They have the guts to challenge taboos. They hold their own work to incredibly high standards. They aim for beauty. And crucially, they get the true nature of wealth. That it's created. Their whole way of thinking and working, as Graham lays out, it's becoming increasingly important for all of us to understand.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? If you're looking to build something, create wealth, make an impact, or even just understand the forces shaping our world, the hacker approach, seen through Paul Graham's eyes, offers this really profound, maybe counterintuitive shift in perspective. It could unlock a lot.
Definitely. And maybe here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on, straight from Graham's thinking. If you want to make money, don't chase the money directly. Instead, try to emulate the hackers and painters. Aim for exceptionally high standards in whatever you do. Cultivate really good taste. Focus relentlessly on directly creating things that are beautiful, or solve real problems, or just make people's lives genuinely easier, things people actually need and will value. The idea is, when you succeed in creating that genuine, tangible value in the world, money tends to find you, almost as a natural consequence.